top 1%, but no prodigy. So I never would have succeeded in a field that required a mind to be that of a prodigy. But it was a much better mind than ordinary people had. And I recognized that quite early, and I just played the hand I was dealt in order to get as much advantage as I could.
You found Ben Franklin when? How young were you when you first came across what Ben Franklin had done?
Well, I think high school, yeah.
And that's when you started modeling yourself after some of the
I
things
don't know when I started modeling myself after Franklin, but I certainly tried to model myself a little. I like the mixture of financial life and regular life.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't copy. I didn't have any musical ability. And so Franklin he played 4 different musical instruments, one of which he invented. Well, this is a lot of musical ability that God simply left out of me. And so I can't do it. So I never made any effort to imitate Franklin's musical ability. But any other ability he had, of course, I tried to imitate.
Let me ask you about the Great Depression. You were just a child then. I know your family struggled.
Yeah, but I was an unusual child.
Yeah.
And I was curious, and I saw what was happening. And it was just clobbering my family everywhere I looked. And it wasn't a little clobber. It was a major clobber.
What happened?
Clobber. Well, my mother had 2 sisters, and my father had 2 sisters. And all 4 of those sons-in-law, who were my uncles, got utterly clobbered by the Great Depression. One was an architect, and the bill just stopped building practically everything. And he finally got a job doing drafting work for the county of Los Angeles, and they paid him $108.08 per month for doing that drafting work, which was above what they would have paid an architect, but not much above. And that's what he was earning. And then they passed the FHA rules, and that was competitive civil service examination. And he was a brilliant man, and so he took the examination and came in first. And they made him chief architect for the FHA in Los Angeles, which is a huge program during the 30s to revive at least some building. And he set the standards for that.
But
and one of the things he was very interested in was the plaster screed. And most people don't even know what the plaster screed is, even when they live in a building. But if you've got plaster that goes down into the ground, you get capillary attraction that sucks a lot of water up into the plaster. It's not desirable. It doesn't always do that, but it sometimes does it. But it's a tiny little incremental cost to stick a little thing on the bottom of the plaster as it comes to the end near the ground. If you put in that plaster screen, it can't suck that water out of the ground into your plaster. My uncle made everybody put in a plaster screen.
and saved all these houses as a result.
Yes. And of course, it was a good example for somebody like me to watch that being done.
To put in the hard work early on and the
And
extra
know
step.
what the extra thing that could be at a tiny incremental cost and would last for 100 years. As a little boy, I carried more money than all the other little boys. When I used to shoot agates in the schoolyard to make money playing competitive agates,
Marbles?
I made sure, marbles, but agates were the most valuable marble. And I never wanted to lose my good, valuable collection. Some guy was more coordinated than I was at shooting marbles. So I would never play for stakes unless I could play better than the other boy.
That's kind of been a habit you've made throughout life. You don't play
Yes,
poker with someone you're going to lose with.
Exactly.
Right.
I didn't always arrange the circumstances. I just fell into them very frequently. But I got to play with competitors who were dumbcoffs.
People who weren't assessing the odds quite the same way?
No. Weren't assessing it. They weren't assessing the odds the way it was easy to to assess the odds. If you learned it, you paid attention when the teacher was teaching you permutations and combinations your second year in high school. The minute they taught me those things, I looked at them. And the math teacher who was teaching me was a dumbcock. And of course, he didn't have any idea how they were important and why. He just taught them as one more thing he had to teach to get through the textbook. And I immediately realized that these things were terribly important. It would do wonders for me if I mastered them. But my math teacher didn't know that. Just so many hundreds of billions in Berkshire. I did not anticipate when Warren and I were starting with our little piddly start that we'd ever get to 100 billion, much less several hundred billion. It was an amazing occurrence.
What happened that you didn't anticipate? What led to that success?
Well, we got a little less crazy than most people, and a little less stupid than most people, and that really helped us. Then in addition, we were given this much longer time to run than most people because something kept us alive into our 90s. And that gave us a long track from our little fiddling start all the way to the 90s. Those are the two things that really happened. And of course, we wised up over time. We got into better and better companies, and we understood more and more of the bad things that could happen to you and how easy they could creep in. And we avoided them even more assiduously when we were old than we did when we were young. And it all worked.
You talked about some of the joy you found with some of the investments Berkshire's made along the way. I think Washington Post was a great one.
Who doesn't like to happily enjoy extreme success accumulated with people who are extremely admirable? That's what Warren and I have gotten to do. Yeah. Well, of course, that's a lot of fun. And a lot of the people at Sequoia have had a lot of fun because they've done a lot of similar things. In the game of investment, of course, the big winners are going to be people who get luck and who get work and talent and luck. That's what we've had. What was interesting about Berkshire's history is what turned the first 300 Berkshire net worth into the first $3 billion of Berkshire net worth. Now, some people have now gone back and checked all their figures, but some people have figured it out. But the results we got in turning 300 million into 3 billion really quickly helped us a lot.
What was it?
Well, it was blue chip stamps and See's Candy and the Buffalo News newspaper and the early insurance operations under Ajit Jain when he came to us. And so everything worked at once. And we made these unholy profits out of these fiddling businesses that weren't that good. And it was a very remarkable thing. And there was some luck involved. I had some everybody has some bad ones. Yeah. You have an off day. The greatest tennis player goes out there someday to the center court and has a bad day. It happens.
I think people learn more from their mistakes sometimes than
and their bad days even.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what really is knowing you can have a very bad day. Do not live your life in such a fashion that a bad day can kill you.
Mm-hmm. Which means what when it comes to investing? Making sure you don't use leverage?
Well, they aim for the fences. It's like a hitter at baseball who tries to hit a home run on every pitch. Yeah. The great home hitters do not remotely swing at every pitch. That's halfway good. They wait for one that they can really handle. And that's what great stock pickers do too. What I am is a lover of the progress of civilization. That turns me on. Oddly enough, the man whose name I bear, my father's father and my father's mother, both thought exactly the same way. And the great moral book, they took me to church in the Presbyterian church and all that. But in Sunday school to take on lessons and all that. But when they really wanted to teach me something which turned them on, it was the legend of Robinson Crusoe, created by Daniel Defoe. They just loved that guy creating a little English civilization on a goddamn vacant island. And that he could do it if he worked at it. And that, of course, that was the lesson they were trying to teach the grandchildren. And I was so amused by it. I could see immediately what they were trying to do. And I could see immediately they were right. Of course, even if you're given a goddamn desert island, you turn it into a civilization if you can. Civilization is important. I accepted all those moral lessons. Now, they never said this is what we're trying to teach you, A, B, C. But they did make me read Robinson Crusoe, not just every week, but every night. Before I went to bed, I got a little dose of Robinson Crusoe. When I was a little tiny boy, and of course it was good for me. And of course, I never got over it. I'm still following Robinson Crusoe's method of going at life. That's what I did. I imitated Robinson Crusoe. My grandfather's teaching worked. That was a funny way to raise grandchildren. And I was the first grandchild on that side, and so I went down and lived there for weeks on end sometimes. And so I got doses of all these lessons from Sunday school and also from Robinson Crusoe. And of course, I really absorbed the Daniel Crusoe lesson. But Grandfather Ingham just talked endlessly about the end of days, and how he'd surmounted all these hardships. And what he taught the grandchildren of a fiscal nature, he says, you know, he says, people think Iowa's the best farmland in the world, and I own a lot of it. And it's a good place to have a bank, and I own the main bank. And he says, it looks pretty easy looking back at retrospect, but it was damn hard, I want you to know. And he said, in interviewing my life, what you grandchildren have to realize, it was his version of Robinson Crusoe. He taught every grandchild, is when they give you a real opportunity, the world's not going to do it very often. And you're only going to get 3 or 4 of these invitations to the pie counter. Mm-hmm. And when you get your invitation, for God's sakes, don't take a small helping. he basically said, lever up when you're sure you're right. And of course, that's good advice. But be sure you're right is what makes it hard. How can you be sure you're right?
Yeah.
Well, but you can't, that's the point. You can't do it very often. Just a few times in a lifetime. Even if you're a Grandpa Ingham or Warren Buffett, you only get a few trips to the pie counter. If you take out of Warren Buffett's life the 10 most important trips to the pie counter, his whole record would look like dung. It would be just worthless. And we knew enough to take a good helping when we were over the trip to the pie counter. Now, we did take way smaller a helping than we could have easily handled. Berkshire could easily be worth twice what it is now. And the extra risk we would have taken would have been practically nothing. All we had to do was use a little more leverage that was easily available.
In hindsight, you're glad you didn't? Just from the potential risk?
It's an interesting example. The reason we didn't is the idea of disappointing a lot of people who had trusted us when we were young under a thing that left us, if we lost 3/4 of our money, we were still very rich.
Right.
That wasn't true of every shareholder. Losing 3/4 of the money would have been a big letdown. So we were very cautious in dealing with our shareholders' money. If Warren and I had owned Berkshire without any shareholders that we knew, we would have made more. We would use more leverage.
I've had people say recently that because of the multiple wars that are going on around the globe right now, if you look at Israel, if you look at Ukraine, what's happening with Russia, people say that we are potentially in the worst of times. If you look at China, for the potential to take over Taiwan. It could end
up blowing up human civilization, which I love so much. And naturally, I hate getting anywhere near. Imagine coming at life with the basic attitude of grandfather Munger and grandfather Ingham. How little I want to see human civilization blown up when it's been so hard to get it where it is from where it was. Of course I don't want it blown up.
You worry about that right now?
Yes, of course I worry about it. You're mine. I don't spend too much time worrying about it because if it's something I can't fix myself, I frequently put it on something I call my too hard file. And I just don't think about it. So I would say atomic war is in my too hard file. I think we're near, I know we're nearer than I like being right now.
Henry Ford and John D. Rockefeller were the richest people in the world when you were born in 1924. Today it's Elon Musk. Is it just new people who come through with the system?
I don't regard Elon Musk as truly that rich because I don't think it's sure that everything he's working on can work. I think he can get his ass handled to him in all those. I would not invest in Elon Musk all those myself.
But you've been impressed by what he's built.
Yes, well, who cannot? Again, that's another lesson. What is the lesson of Elon Musk? The Musk is, it's always an outlet. Somebody who has a perfectly ridiculous amount of money, it almost always has an element of luck in it. He's been quite lucky in what he's picked to double down, double down, double down. And then he's used leverage so much that he's doubled down right to the edge of extinction, maybe 2 or 3 times. How many people can go to the edge of extinction without stepping into it? Well, he's done it 3 times. Maybe he's got 6 more in him, I don't know. I put Elon Musk in a pile. I never bet against him, and I never bet with him. As far as I'm concerned, he doesn't exist. My life works better if I treat the world as though he didn't exist. I'd rather deal with a guy with an IQ of 130 who thinks it's 125 than a guy with an IQ of 180 that thinks it's 200. That second guy will kill you.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea.
I was very sad to see that because those guys are, yeah. You know, those guys are heroes of mine.
Let's talk just about a few cultural things. I know reading is the one way that you say, the only way people can really get smart. You don't know anyone who's gotten smarter who doesn't read a lot.
Well, yes, even the fiction of the world, which includes a good deal of the Bible and Shakespeare and the great novels and all that stuff. The people were good at painting pictures and painting and telling stories, and people learn best when they learn a story. It looks more like a piece of a life, a story. So it works. The great rulers are people like Lee Kuan Yew and Lon Fuller. And Lee Kuan Yew, he said, figure out what works and do it. That was his sole message. Figure out what works and do it. And of course, mathematically that translates figure out what doesn't work and avoid it.
Right.
And both rules are correct. And yeah, you have to get it right, or as close to right as human beings can get it right.
Flash.
As far as Lee Kuan Yew is going, I just realized I'd made a mistake when he died. I'm going to commission a bust of Lee Kuan Yew and stick it somewhere important. That is the most important governmental leader. It's the most important nation builder that ever existed in the history of the world. There is no other record equal to Lee Kuan Yew's. Unbelievable achievement. A malarial swamp turned into a modern civilized powerhouse. And then using that example to utterly change and transform China. And not only China, but Vietnam. It was the example of Lee Kuan Yew that the North Koreans, of all people, turned to turn Vietnam into a powerhouse that's civilizing. There's never been a career like Lee Kuan Yew.
But you are not somebody who spends a lot of money on yourself. We are living, and we're sitting here in a beautiful house, but this is a house that you lived in for 70 years.
I know.
You
but
could have moved
Warren's
and spent
been in
more.
his house for about 60 years.
Yeah.
We're similar. But you see, we're both smart enough to have watched our friends who got rich build these really fancy houses. And I would say in practically every case, they make the person less happy, not happier.
How so?
In other words, having a basic house really helps you. Having a really fancy house that's good for entertaining 100 people at once is a very expensive thing to do. And it doesn't do you that much good.
I think one of the things you've said along the years, at least this is what I've been told, is that it's not staying rich that's difficult, it's staying sane.
Yeah, of course.
What happens?
Well, most people go a little crazy in some way or another.
I mean, that's a lot of your life. A lot of your
Yeah.
life and advice is
Avoiding traps.
invert, and try and figure out where you don't want to be.
Yes, and then avoid it. Yes, of course. That's what everybody's life is with any sense. All the people I know, and my intimate friends now, they never would have become alcoholics. It was too dangerous. They just don't, they don't get near it if it takes that many fine people into deep trouble.
Yeah.
I knew quite a people, having lived so long and have scattered around through different activities. And I bumped into a lot of different people. And I noticed as I got older and older that all the people that had very early heart trouble, the males that had very early heart trouble, had one thing in common.
Right.
They all smoked a lot of cigarettes. So I could see that coming fairly early. And it's rather interesting. I tried to learn to smoke so I could be a cool kid like the other kids in high school. I tried to ruin my life, but it nauseated me. And so I said, the hell with this. People have lured me into a goddamn thing. You gotta get nauseated by learning to do it. And I said, I'm not interested enough in going through a lot of nausea that I want to smoke, so I just didn't smoke.
Now, you did drink from time to time, right?
Yeah, sure, but I didn't. Again, I was, and I even drank to excess a few times, but I was always, there were enough alcoholics and near alcoholics in my own family to make me worry about liquor.
Yeah.
And so I was always very cautious about drinking liquor. Now, I did occasionally get drunk and throw up. That gave me the nausea, which enabled me to give up liquor.
Do you still drink? I mean, living to 100, everybody wants to know what's the secret. What is the secret for you? What did you conscientiously
I
go
don't know
about
the
this?
secret.
Yeah.
I avoided the standard ways of failing because my game in life was always to avoid all standard ways of failing. You teach me the wrong way to play poker and I will avoid it. You teach me the wrong way to do something else, I will avoid it. And of course I've avoided a lot because I'm so cautious.
But you do things you like you'll eat peanut brittle or
Yes, doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
I drink Diet Coke.
Yeah.
I'm sure Diet Coke shortens my life a little. But I don't give a damn if the last week of lying there unconscious goes away. It's only the good part of life I want anyway.
You know, there are all of these billionaires now, Silicon Valley types, who are trying to do anything they can to extend life, crazy things.
They find they've got a family full of Parkinson's. And of course I watched my mother and my sister die of Parkinson's disease. And so I'm familiar with that one.
Yeah.
That's a very unpleasant thing. I do not like the last month of Parkinson's disease.
Yeah.
I've seen it up close.
Yeah.
It's no fun for the people in it. It's no fun for the people around them. It's no fun at all. And Diet Coke may be helping me skip it. Who knows? It's helping me skip the last month, not the first month.
Is there anything left on your bucket list? Anything you'd like to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I am so old and weak compared to what I was when I was 96 that I no longer want to catch a 200-pound tuna. It's just too goddamn much work. To get it in takes too much physical strength. So I don't know, I would have paid any amount to catch a 200-pound tuna when I was younger and never caught one. And now if given the opportunity, I would just decline going. I won't even go out after them. There are things you give up with time. Yeah.
You're pretty active. You've got a busy social schedule. You're on Zoom. You have breakfasts and lunches.
Well, I like it that way.
Yeah.
That's my idea of a proper old age for me. And I didn't plan it. It just happened. And when it happened, I welcomed it. I am very good at recognizing unfair advantages. And I got unfair advantages in old age the way I got unfair advantages in non-old age. And when they came, I just grabbed them. Boom, boom, boom. The one grab I never made was for a third wife. Too late.
Why?
It's a little too late. There are people for whom it's a necessity. They're so much more comfortable in marriage than they are outside it, that they really need it to be human. It's just the way they're put together. And for such people, I recommend the 100-year-old dating app. But you'll find that if you put it in, that not many 100-year-olds want it. They're just lying there.
Your partnership with Nancy, your second wife.
Yeah, so a 52-year-old marriage.
Yeah,
It's a long marriage.
it is.
And she got to live it all the way to 86, which is a long life. And now there are some tough stretches, but most lives have some tough stretches.
Yeah.
And hers came very near the end.
I mean, Charlie, people probably look at you and think you're incredibly wealthy. You've had all these great opportunities and things that have happened in your life, but you've struggled too.
Of course, everybody struggles. The iron rule of life is everybody struggles.
I try and think back of what the toughest moments might have been and how you got through some of those. And I mean,
Well, we all know how to get through them. The great philosophers of realism are also the great philosophers of what I call soldiering through. If you soldier through, you can get through almost anything. And it's your only option. You can't bring back the dead. You can't cure the dying child. You can't do all kinds of things. You have to soldier through, and somehow you soldier through. If you have to walk through the streets crying for a few hours a day, it's part of soldiering through. Go ahead and cry away, but you can't quit. You can cry all right, but you can't quit.
you've had time in your life when you've done that?
Sure. I cried all the time when my first child died, but I knew I couldn't change the fate.
Charlie, Warren Buffett told me that a long, long time ago. You told him he should live his life. He should write his obituary the way he wants it written and then live his life accordingly.
Yeah, sure.
I assume you've done the same thing for yourself.
Well, no, I've written my obituary the way I've lived my life, and if people want to pay attention to it, it's all right with me. And if they want to ignore it, that's okay with me too. I'll be dead, but what difference will it make? And so, but I think it's not a bad idea.
Is the plan for your life, the obituary you would write in your 30s, the same you would write today?
Sure. I basically believe in the soldier on system. Mm-hmm. Lots of hardship will come, and you gotta handle it well by soldiering through. And a few rare opportunities will come. You gotta learn how to recognize them when they come, and not make too minor a trip to the pie counter when the opportunity is available. And those are simple lessons.